Good afternoon, viewers, and welcome to Matters of Public Importance, right here on Channel 6. I'm Gail Teixeira, Parliamentary Opposition Chief Whip for the People's Progressive Party, Civic Members of Parliament, and for the People's Progressive Party. On this program, we shall focus on matters of public importance, bring you information, discussion on issues and matters that are of concern to you, the Guyanese public, every Thursday between 12:30 and 1:30 right here on Channel 6. Before we get into the rest of the program, let me remind you, as always, of the telephone numbers you can use to call in right here on this program, 225-0010 and 225-008. And as I've informed you in previous programs, we have our office of the Leader of the Opposition at 304 Church Street between New Garden and Peterborough Street, just opposite the Georgetown Cricket Club on the Church Street side. And so we're open from 9 to 5:36 in the afternoons, Monday to Friday, and then on Saturdays we're open between 9 and about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So you're welcome to drop in to meet with members of Parliament to raise issues of concern to you. And so we have also including members of Parliament who drop in and have scheduled times that they will come into the office to be available to meet with the public. We also have former Prime Minister Sam Hinds and former head of the Presidential Secretariat who come in and also volunteer with us to meet with the public. So feel free we are here to serve you. We're the elected officials for the people of Guyana, not just for those who voted for the People's Progressive Party, Civic. And so our number is 225-3432. Just remember, 225-3432. 32 in the last two digits are the number of members of Parliament we have, 32. Each week I also remind you of Freedom Radio Anti-Discrimination Committee hotline that is there to serve you, 225-1479, so that if there are issues that are worrying you to do with discrimination and so on, please feel free to call that number. And if you're having problems, please call the central line of Freedom House to get an idea if the line is giving you trouble. I did forget to say that the geographic MPs for the PPC are available in the outer town areas, and so in Region 1, Colin Kroll goes in once a month to Mabaruma and to see people in the Region 1 area, and he spends a couple of days there. So he went in just last week. He will be going in a month's time. We also have the Gillian Burton-Passauto, who you know has been on this program a couple of times. She is available at Annandale Freedom House office between 9 and 12 o'clock on Saturdays. So for the people on the East Coast, if they wish to drop in and speak to Gillian, she's a very active MP and goes out into the areas and so on. She's at the Church Street office also once a week. On the East Bank, Demerara, Neil Kumar is also there on every Wednesday at 9 o'clock at the East Bank Eccles NDC office to meet with the public. We also have in Region 5, Member of Parliament Harry Gill, who meets with the public every Wednesday also at 9 o'clock at the Bath Freedom House office in Region 5. In New Amsterdam, we have Dr. Vishwa Mahadio, who meets the first and third Mondays every month in New Amsterdam Freedom House, and then the second and fourth Mondays every month he goes to the Quarantine Freedom House office at number 63 starting 9 o'clock. He's away for about 2-3 weeks right now, but he will be back before the end of September. Upper Mazaruni, Dr. Jennifer Westford will be there on the third Thursday of every month to meet with the public at and she will be moving some months in Upper Maz and other times she will be at Bartica. Region 8, Pauline Sukai, she would be there when we have scheduled trips in there because, of course, that's a very expensive place to go and to move around in that region, but she will be going in the near future. And of course in Region 9 we have Alistair Charlie, our geographic MP, also like the others, who is available at the Letham Freedom House office every Monday starting from 9 o'clock. so that we're trying to make sure that people can access the members of parliament, the geographic MPs, and also other MPs. So from time to time, even though some of us may not be geographic MPs, we go out and meet with the people in the areas, and in other cases we're invited. So today is special. Today is September 1st, the beginning of Amerindian Heritage Month. Begins today, and the ceremony is at 5 o'clock at the Sophia Exhibition Center. Just a comment on my part, no members of the parliamentary opposition have received invitations as of 12:30 today. So I don't know where the invitations are, but you know, the fact that the People's Progressive Party administration, in consultation with the Amerindian community, started this yearly tradition of a month dedicated to the Amerindian peoples, the first people to settle in our lands, it's rather, let's say, unacceptable. But we are beginning to understand this very small-minded approach to what are national events. We've had the experience with independence, and seems to be a running trend in this country. However, we want to not spoil the day in any way, and to wish all our Amerindian peoples and communities to have to enjoy this month, to celebrate it, to think, to work, to plan, and look to the future. And for those of us who are here, to acknowledge the tremendous contributions that our first people, the Amerindians, have made and continue to make to our nation. One of the things that we don't always focus on when we talk about the contribution of Amerindian people, we talk about culture and music and dance and food, but we don't actually discuss a critical issue in terms of how our borders were defined. And so, as I said, once we talk about their contributions in preserving their culture, their languages, and practices, and the sustainable use of the environment, which is critical, because we've learned from that. In fact, globally, people have learned from indigenous people and Amerindian peoples, Aboriginal peoples all over the world, and how they've been able to live for thousands of years in areas and not harm the environment. And so now the world is catching up on some of this. Of course, their contribution to our cultural diversity. But one of the critical things, as I said, is by their very early presence and occupation of the length and breadth of Guyana, their singular contribution has been to the definition of Guyana's borders and a territorial sovereignty. If they weren't there strategically located along what is now our borders may have looked a bit differently when Schomburg was appointed by the British as the Commissioner of Boundaries to define our borders. And so it is in that period when he traveled throughout the country and created the first visual representation of the indigenous peoples of our country by artists who accompanied him, and his own documentaries and notes on what he saw, that in fact our borders may have looked very different. And so this is a critical area that we have to acknowledge with the indigenous people, that by their very presence, in their very presence in the territory that became Guyana, that they in fact made a singular major contribution to the definition of our borders and our territorial integrity. So thank you to all of those Amerindian peoples, our Amerindian brothers and sisters who have lived in this country and continue to serve and represent our people proudly at all different levels. I know that there'll be a number of activities in the regions. I know Region 9 has a number of activities prepared, and I know a number of all the 10 regions actually should have activities planned. I wish all of the people attending to join, learn, enjoy being a diverse nation. Of course, we have to get down to matters of public importance too, and some of the issues I normally raise. And so 2 weeks ago, I exposed 16 scandalous scandals and scams within the first 15 months of the APNU-AFC coalition government. On average, it's one per month. But in August alone, there were 4. The drug bond, Hags-Bosch settlement, with BK International for $1.17 billion. The fuel licenses granted to what was the Chief Executive Officer of Guyana Water Inc. under another company that he is on the board of directors, which would be selling fuel to GWI. And of course the Ministry of Agriculture admittingly spending hundreds of millions of dollars without going to tender. So this program will continue to focus on lack of consultation, lack of disclosure, lack of transparency and accountability. So let's look at the lack of consultation and some recent examples, because every couple of mornings there are more and more examples. But let's deal with what probably took place in the last week or two. And you know, this lack of consultation and making announcement and catching everybody in the back foot, and nobody knows what it means. There's no one explaining to people what it means. They're not being invited to consultations or to air their views. After it happens a couple of times, and then it goes on and happens a couple more times, then this is a pattern. And it keeps continuing after 15 months, then you call it a characteristic. And so the characteristic of the APNU-AFC coalition government after 15 months is a characteristic of no consultation. And so let's deal with one of them. At the National Two Showers Council, the President announced that he will be establishing an Indigenous Peoples Planning Authority, or something to that effect, to oversight the National Two Showers Council and the Ministry of Indigenous Affairs. This was greeted with shock. The National Two Showers Council and the chairman and other Two Showers in the executive were shocked. They were never given advance warning. They were never told anything about it. They knew nothing. And of course, the general representative from the communities, which included Two Showers and senior councils, were shocked. No consultation. And of course, in the course of the conference, they expected that some minister, some cabinet member would have given them a great enlightenment about this proposal of the President. Not a word. Not a word in the newspapers, nothing. So they're still waiting to know what is this supposed to be about, except that they don't agree with it. There's a Ministry of Indigenous Affairs. The National Two Showers Council, by the way, is the legitimate authority representing the Amerindian communities in this country, by law. And so they are the persons who should be consulted on such things. And I wonder, this is just me wondering, and someone may say I'm bad-minded, but I'm wondering if this move to create a new authority to oversight the NTC is also a way to marginalize further the Ministry of Indigenous Affairs and finally disappear it. So you'll have this 5-man, because it will be men, managing this authority and managing and telling the National Two Showers Council what will be, what they want. And so this has been greeted with the usual response: we know nothing, we've not been consulted, could someone explain? And of course there's just deafening silence. The second one, of course, I raised last week, and we discussed it when we had Mr. Copen from the Georgetown City Council and also Jillian Burton-Passad here, to do with Region 10. That the Region 10 people learned last week that the Linden Town Council had decided to institute tolls for the Linden municipality. And so apparently this decision was made in July at a council meeting to have these new fees, and then it was gazetted on August the 22nd by the minister and the Linden Town Council. And as I said last week, no one knows when this is to start and where are the locations of the toll gates. Is it going to start at Moblice? Is it somewhere when you enter into Linden? Where is it? We're not talking about the crossing of the bridge. We're talking about toll gates and stations within Linden to collect revenue for road use. And so last week I had said that I'd given you an idea of some of the costs, the fees that will be involved, and but again, no consultation. The Linden residents knew nothing about this. No one spoke to them. No one consulted them. And of course, the users of the road that traverse from Region 9 all the way up into Georgetown had no idea. No businessmen have been spoken to. None of the people who bring goods into Linden have been spoken to. This will increase the cost of living not only in Linden, not only in Region 10. It will increase the cost for goods that are traveling to Lethem, to Region 9, coming out of Region 9, for example, going into a Region 7 as well. And so how can a decision like this be made without consultation? And in fact, I am still convinced that the Linden Community Town Council cannot pass laws to increase fees without the approval of Parliament. This was an issue being raised with Georgetown when they tried to create new taxes. And so if the cabinet of this country cannot bring a new tax in unless they go to the Parliament, how can a lower body, the City Council or Neighborhood Democratic Council, bring in taxes? I'm not talking about rates and taxes, which is provided for in the Municipal and District Council Act. I'm talking about different taxes, altogether new taxes that are not specified. And so, no consultation with anybody. People are calling me and saying, well, when is this going to start, Ms. Gail? Do you know where the toll gate? I don't know anything. And they have decided the best approach to deal with these sudden pronouncements and announcements is they announce it and they shut up afterwards. They don't say anything. So the public is left confused, they don't know what's going on. And this matter of lack of consultation must be of concern to every Guyanese. Whether you voted for the PPC, whether you voted for APNU, whether you voted for anybody else, you have a right to be consulted, you have a right to be informed. You have a right to be informed. And when it comes to Article 13 of the Constitution, where it talks about that the people of this country must be informed and be part of the decision making. They must participate in the decision making in this country, particularly with matters that relate to their welfare. And so these decisions are made, for me, it's in violation of the Constitution. The fourth area, of course, we spoke about before, the no consultation on the Walter Roth Museum removal. And of course, the Minister of Education, the National Two-Shells Council, came under pressure from the Two-Shells saying, why are you moving our museum? And of course, then he said he would then consult. He would then ask President Granger to put a pause on the removal of the Walter Roth Museum to allow him, the Minister of Education, under which Walter Roth Museum comes, to be able to consult with the Amerindian leaders and the anthropologists and so on. That was last week. There's been no announcement since by the Cabinet, by the Ministry of Presidency, to say that, yes, the President has agreed to put a hold on this. There's nothing. There's silence again. And of course, you know, the fourth one is a continuing one, and that is the parking meters in Georgetown. No consultation. They went ahead with the contract. The contract has been questioned as highly questionable and looking at a scandal of no mean order. The public has spoken. People have been writing letters. The municipality is supposed to have consultation with people. They said they would. They never have up to now, except that the recent meeting of the town council, they're now talking about changing the contract from 49 years to 20 years. This is absurd. The issue of consulting with the people to do with the parking meters, is this the solution to the traffic problem? And what is the impact on the Guyanese citizens? This is the capital city. Everything has to pass through here. In a period of economic decline, in a period where people have lost jobs, in a period where the private sector is hurting, particularly in the areas like construction, engineering, where there's a shortfall and people are being laid off. You have sugar workers being laid off at will, 1,700. You're talking about laying off LBI and next year Rose Hall. You got the rice farmers who are in trouble because they cannot get rice sold, they can't get any decent price. In this kind of situation where everything ends up in this country, in this city, that parking meters are continuing, and they believe they can placate the Guyanese people by saying that, okay, it's not going to be 49 years anymore, it's going to be 20 years. What they're not talking about is the fact that the parking meters are a problem for the citizens of the country. It will escalate the cost of living for the ordinary people. There are other solutions. They should open the doors with the people and the stakeholders to talk about what are some ideas to reduce the traffic congestion in the city and not go in the direction of parking meters. So that's 4 examples I can give of lack of consultation. Of course, we have the continuation of the scandals from August that are still rolling on and still heated up. with lots of things and contradictions still going on. Let's go to the drug bond. Well, they finally sent the contract from Parliament via the Minister of Health. A couple pages were missing, including the signatures of who signed the contract, which I understand that we will be provided with that by today or tomorrow. However, when one reads the contract, it's very clear. This is for an office, not for a drug bond. And this is a contract that is all in the favor of the landlord and not the tenant, and tenant being the Ministry of Health. Of course, in addition to that, there are questions that cannot be answered. Diamond Pharmacy Bond, which was new and built by the former government, is not full yet because there are tremendous shortages of drugs anywhere in the system. Everywhere there are drug shortages and medical supply shortages. You can go from one end of Guyana to the other. So this whole issue that the excuse the Cabinet Subcommittee gave, having reviewed the contract, was that really they need this because the time it takes to move drugs and supplies from Diamond to Georgetown. First of all, the Georgetown Hospital has its own bond in the hospital compound. Secondly, if you want another drug bond in the city, why would you choose a house that now has to, government, by paying the rent, is allowing the owner now to build the capacity to be some kind of bond. I'm not saying it's a pharmaceutical bond, some kind of bond. And in which the government is paying for 6,000 square feet. They're paying $2,416 per square foot. If they were to have rented the whole of the new GPC bond at 19 million versus this is 14 million because the drug bond in Sussex, so-called office in Sussex Street, is 12.5 million plus VAT, which it brings it up to 14.5, which the government has to pay. The 19 million, if we were to have rented the entire 70,000 square feet of new GPC, the square foot would have been $271 per square foot. So who brought, as one of the newspapers asked today, who brought Larry Singh into, and the Linden Holding Inc. into the whole issue of having a bond and having a building to rent? Someone was massaging the system somewhere along the line, and the Cabinet bears full-time responsibility for this. The Cabinet approved all of this. And so you then had the pathetic and sad situation. I felt very sorry for Dr. Norton, but he's got to be able to come straight with the Guyanese people. They then announced last week, Thursday afternoon, the minister would be making an apology to the speaker and would be handing over the apology to the speaker. And so the press was invited to go to see all this. The press was there on Friday. The minister was with the speaker. The minister came down to the press conference and was asked, could they have a copy of did he make an apology? Yes, he did. Did he hand it in? Could he have a copy? And it became a joke because fundamentally what happened is that, one, he didn't hand in the apology because he didn't have an envelope and he wasn't following procedure. And he could not share a copy with the public because he had to hand it in first to the speaker. So this became an amusing situation for all. The issue of the fuel licenses. Could you just give me 1 second? I just had a note, which means I have to interrupt what I'm doing. And I wish this wouldn't happen. Yeah, I think it's this one. I'm not even sure what is it. Yeah, sorry about that. I apologize. So the minister began to look really pathetic. He did make an apology, didn't hand it in, couldn't hand it in, wouldn't give it to the press. But in addition to that, you have the calls by the public that the minister should resign and the cabinet should do something and revoke the contract and go out to tender if it really wants a bond. Of course, the president's response has been one to make it clear that nothing will happen to Dr. Norton. He's fine. And he has also been bolstered by the PNC Congress, where he was re-elected unopposed as the vice chairman, one of the vice chairmen of the party. So it is clear that the coalition government is closing ranks, and no matter what anybody does, they will take care of each other. Fuel licenses, after the initial exposures and the fact that one of the gentlemen actually who was hired and put into GWI has a record in the United States, a police record, a criminal record, and I understand the board of GWI will be examining that today. Silence. But the point is that the CEO of the Guyana Water Inc. applied under the name of a company to get fuel licenses. And as Mr. Nanlal had pointed out 2 weeks ago on this program, it takes you sometimes years to get all these licenses. There are 4 different licenses for storage, for transportation, for locations, for occupational health and safety, for environmental safety. And yet, this was a company was created in February. They applied in September 2015, and by November 2015, they got their license. And the gentleman who is now CEO got the job on the 1st of October. So he didn't think that it was important, there was a conflict of interest in all of this. Hagsbash, well, we see the running commentary going on between Basil Williams and Mr. Nandalal. And the recent one is Minister Williams is now threatening to take Nandalal to privilege. Well, let's see. We'll see. These things don't frighten us in the PPP whatsoever. But the issue is that Hagsbash, $1.17 billion. There was no negotiation with BK by our government, the PPP government, to settle anything to do with Hagsbash with BK. We're the ones who terminated his contract. And that there is no evidence to show other than a threatening letter, which Bulkan finally revealed to the public, was a threatening letter. Threatening letter doesn't mean that you go into settlement. And we didn't. Not before the election, they did. And so Hagsbash, $1.17 billion. So keep adding these to all the other things of the DDL and the Reseda and the money spent on Durban Park and so on. And you'll see what's going on. At the same time, last week we talked about the 2 offers between the union and the government to do with public service wages. And we have seen that the union has rejected that offer, and they are also upset that there was no discussion on the allowances, which the union was calling for an increase in the allowances for the workers. Of course, there's a new problem because allowances are taxable under our law. And so how is it that Valda Lawrence, as the minister, goes to Linden and negotiates with Rusal that the bauxite workers will not pay tax on their overtime? I'm sure this is going to lead to major litigation in the courts, where other workers and other places will now be going to court to say, if the bauxite workers can have non-taxable allowances, overtime and so on, that's what we're talking about, then the other workers of this country, including the public service, should be given that. And it means an amendment to the law. The law would have to be amended because that is what it is. Allowances are taxable. Overtime allowances, for example, are taxable. So we have that going on in the industrial climate to do with, again, sugar, for example. The Wales estate continues. The court seemed to have thrown up their hand and said, let the union and the unions and Gaisuko consult with each other. However, in all of this, it is very clear that we're coming in August, near to the end of the year, and that if one looks at what is a 5% increase given for persons earning under $100,000. So if you're earning, say, $50,000, which is non-taxable, and you get a 10%, which is what the government's offering, it would put you at $55,000. $55,000 now puts you beyond the threshold. So that $5,000 will now be taxable by 1/3. However, the 1% that's given to those earning $1 million and more means that their increase would be $100,000 more versus the persons under 100,000 who are getting 10% increase. So in terms of monetary gain, the ones who are at 1 million are still doing quite well, actually, and they only got these increases last year, September, dated back to July last year. And of course the discipline forces, the police, the fire, the prison, and the army haven't got an increase for 2015, didn't get an increase as yet for 2016, and I'm saying it's highly doubtful they will get an increase. What they got last year, December, was a 50,000 extra one-off payment for the whole year. And that wasn't like it was before. The discipline services used to get whatever increases the public servants got, dating back to the January of the year, and also they would get 1 month extra, 13th month salary. Whatever they were earning was 13, it was exactly that. So if you're getting 50,000, you got 50,000. If you were receiving a salary in the army in the upper ranks of 300,000, you would get 300,000. What they got last year was 50,000 across the board. So that no one is clear if there are going to be increases, because all along in the budget February 2016, people were told that the teachers and discipline forces could not get an increase until the increases for the public servants were sorted out, because there had to be equivalencies between the levels of the discipline services and teachers with the public servants. Well, that matter hasn't been resolved as yet. And so I'm saying, I hope it doesn't happen, but I have a feeling that the discipline forces may get another, 50,000 by December. The fact that the GPSU has turned down the offer, this final offer, we'll see what happens in the next week coming, to do with because we have given last time the examples of what the different salaries, what it would mean in the last program. And so these are some serious situations for the workers, particularly when the inflation rate is going up, the cost of living is going up, and there are shortages in this country. There were shortages a couple of weeks ago of sugar. All you got was the dark sugar that was kind of wet. And so the other packaged sugar you're seeing some of it come out in small amounts now. So cost of living is changing as well. And people are facing some serious situations. The kind of support that people have got, particularly in the interior areas of the We Cash program, that's gone. The school uniform program in many of the interior areas have not been distributed up to now. Fabric has not been distributed up to now as was traditional. So people are very uncertain of what was going on. And how do they manage their life when they used to predict and be able to know that every July they got this money for uniform, they got this money in October for We Care program, the school feeding programs went on, etc., etc. So people are very, very uncertain about what is going on and when things are going to happen. And of course we have also some other issues going on. The government has talked, and I call it broken promises. They talked about the Local Government Commission, that this was a major issue. This was an issue that was sitting there for a long time because the government, the PPP government, and the then opposition, PNC, could not reach consensus on what we're doing. Finally, we were able to, in most areas. There's still areas we voted against, but we were 1 seat short. And so the Local Government Commission went into this Parliament, and so the Parliamentary Committee, by a majority, selected, the Parliamentary Committee dealt with other bills, but I'm making a mistake, I apologize for that. The Local Government Commission, under the law, was that the Leader of the Opposition would nominate 3 persons for the President to appoint. The President nominates 3. The Parliamentary Committee would nominate 1 from the trade unions that represent local government employees, and the Minister of Local Government would nominate one from the local government bodies as well. Well, the Leader of the Opposition did submit his 3 names, and I think we've told you before, Mr. Whitaker, Mr. Clinton, Collymore, and Ms. Soba. Apparently they're not pleased with our names, and I received a letter from Minister Bulkan telling me that he wanted to know in details of the internal consultation of the Leader of the Opposition and how he arrived at these names. Well, you can imagine I didn't send him a polite letter, but put in his place. The law doesn't require the Leader Opposition to do that. The Leader Opposition, it is they who fought in the Parliament that the Leader Opposition, when they were in the opposition, had to have the exact same number of nominees as the President. And it had to be from the parliamentary parties in opposition. There's only one party in opposition, that's us. So we did what we had to do. But it is now weeks later. There was no rush in Parliament by the government to deal with the parliamentary nominee of one from the trade union movement. And now it is another month gone by, and the Local Government Commission has still not been appointed or sworn in by the President, and we don't know who his nominees are, nor do we know who Minister Bulkan's nominees are. And the suspicion, of course, is that they have no interest in having the Local Government Commission appointed too early, as they wish to do their own appointment of town clerks and overseers in the new 71 local authorities that have arisen from the March 2016 local government elections. And then, of course, you know, we've had the amendment that Mr. Ramjatan promised to send of the protocol for SOKU. We finally received it last week, the amendment to the standing orders of the Guyana Police Force, within which they refer to the Serious Organized Crime Unit. They're calling it a Special Organized Crime Unit, when it originally was called a Serious Organized Crime Unit under the Anti-Money Laundering and Countering the Financing of Terrorism Act. And so when we look at that, and I'm sure this is going to be debated in the Parliament, that the areas that they have given to SOKU that are not in compliance with the Money Laundering Act, and that in fact far surpasses what is the role that it should be playing under the FIU. And again, it seems to be having many bosses giving it instructions. In addition to that, of course, we've heard the Minister of Public Security announcing that SOKU may become a separate entity under someone else, not the police. Well, that's a shock, because SOKU has police powers. SOKU has police powers as defined, and therefore, if they're going to now be creating some board and somebody else, this is what we were afraid of all the time, that SOKU would become an appendage of SARA, the State Assets Recovery Agency, which they're creating by a bill, and will be debated sometime October when we go back from recess. This is what we were pointing out a month ago, 6 weeks ago, that this is the direction they're going in. So the statement by the Minister obviously looks as if that we may not be wrong on that issue. And so, Public Procurement Commission. 5 names have been appointed, nominated and approved by 2/3 majority in the House on August the 8th. It was a major achievement in that the government has 3 people that they've nominated. We have 2 that we nominated, and we reached consensus for the first time in what was 13 years. So it's a major achievement. And we promised and we committed to lend consensus on the process of consultation, recognize the role we play and the role the government plays. However, since that has happened, there seems to be no hurry to move into the appointment and swearing in of the Public Procurement Commission. This is a constitutional body, it's enshrined in the law. It has a budgetary provision made for it in the February 2016 budget, and so it needs to be appointed. Remember, viewers, that it is Mr. Ramjatan in the 8th Parliament that amended the Procurement Act with the support of people in the PNC, and by the way, Ramjatan was a member of our party then, and so were some others who are not with us now, who amended that act to allow for that the Cabinet, once the Public Procurement Commission was established, that Cabinet's role of giving no objection to contracts would completely cease, completely come to an end. And so we're wondering why there's this delay to be able to put in the PPC. You got 5 people approved by 2/3 of the House. Some people may not be happy that whose names were left out, but some of those names that were removed apparently do work and contract work with the government, and you cannot be on the Public Procurement Commission monitoring government expenditure and awarding of contracts in the National Procurement and Tender Administration Bureau if there are members on that board who are also contracting with the government and getting contracts. So conflict of interest, and that is why it has been an area of great controversy in how people were selected, just like how people were selected for the FIU director, deputy director, and of course the one that's incomplete, the Anti-Money Laundering and Countering the Financing of Terrorism Authority, where 10 names have to come from Parliament. And so those are some of the issues we're going to talk about today. And of course, as usual, you are free and open to raise any other matters that worry you, that concern you, matters whether you disagree with me or not, so that we can have a discussion. So the lines are open, you can call in, and just to remind you, if as we waiting for calls, we have a call now. Okay. Thank you. Good afternoon. Welcome to Matters of Public Importance.
Hello, yeah. Good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon.
You know what bothers me a lot, and bothers me a great lot, to see that the world government in the whole world now becomes opposition, know it all. The world government, now becomes opposition, know everything. I tell you what, it's disgusting. It really feels a disgrace. Goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. We are glad to hear different views because we get a chance to respond to you. So we have no problem with you calling in. However, we may, if you believe that we were the worst government, how is it that $780 million was left in the coffers and Guyana was the second country in this hemisphere to have had 8 years of consecutive growth? How are we the country that was able to reduce poverty by more than 50% and meet the Millennium Development Goals? So you have a right to think about it, but we're in opposition now, and the opposition has a role to play. And one thing we've committed ourselves as an opposition, we will not do as the former opposition, which is to obstruct the government. And that is what they did to us. $90 billion was cut from the budgets in the 9th Parliament by the opposition, just because two parties that didn't run together had one seat more than us. And we have committed on the floor of the House on August 17, 2015, we will not obstruct this government in doing what are developmental works in the interests of the people. So you may not like us, sir, that's fine with us. But the electorate on March at the local government elections gave us 48 of the 71 local authorities, having supposedly lost in May 2015 with 4,526 votes. So the electorate will determine who is the next government. But we are doing what we feel is right for our people, and we are representing all people, regardless if they voted green, yellow, or red. And that's been our position from the time this party was formed, that we represent all Guyanese, and we will continue to do that. So I respect your views, but I have a right to say mine as well. So thank you for listening to me. Yes, good afternoon. Matters of public importance.
You, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, good afternoon.
Yeah, I like your program. Good afternoon to you, and I like the program that you're coming out with.
Yes.
I just want to share my view. I'm a PPP supporter. Likewise, I had, when was the last general election, I had doubts in my mind and so on.
Yes.
But what I was trying to say, you see how you are on the program as you were a minister then. I think the PPP, whilst in power, whilst I'm a supporter, I think I have the right to share my view. I think whilst they were in office, they should have had a PRO. You know, to do this kind of program, so you had person, not necessarily you, but in the program to listen to others, people, the public views, and maybe see what is it having the people facing and these kind of things. So, you know, you could be able to address it in a different manner.
Yeah.
You know, because I personally feel that what is happening now, the hardship and everything that's going on, and all this investigation and all this revenge and these kind of things, I think PPP has caused it in a sense because I think our government has been lackadaisical. Because they tend to do things and they're not thinking and doing the things and they forget the low class people. Now you're in the opposition, you have a program here, whereby you're listening to people, now you're going on the streets, everybody's going out and reaching public. Why when our politician is on the opposition is doing this kind of thing, and when they're in office, they forget the people? You know?
Yeah.
I wanted to know, I mean, regardless if you're in position, you need some public time, you need to interact with the public to see what's going on. You need to put people down there. If you don't have the time as a minister, we can't expect you to do everything. But at the same time, we could expect you to have PROs or people who could be able to relate and bring information to you, and proper information too, so you could see what's going on within the hemisphere or the people that voted for you. And I think what is happening now is that we have, the PP is on its back foot now. Now they're trying to do things in different way. I heard you talk about the Public Procurement Commission. Yes, of course, Mr. Anderson, it's till 10. Now I saw you in the opposition now, because when the government was in power, the PP, they didn't have time with it. They used to like throw it back every time you have a session on it. They never used to bring it up. Now you're in opposition, you're talking about it. I have a next point. In terms of the
Yeah, I have other callers, so don't take too long.
No,
One more point, and then I have to.
Yes.
I have other
Now,
people
on the
waiting.
1% story, when PP are in power, and you take a 5% and put it across the board. The PP ministers put 5% on their salary, it's in earning 950,000, you add 5% on it. Now these are they're here. That's what I'm saying. All politicians are the same, because they already had increase in the first 6 months. Now they come here, and the increases for the public servant, they cash in on it again. So I don't think any politician have the public at heart, the citizen, this hardcore, hard working scenario, people who chopping cane, people who digging gutters, people who earning a daily living. I don't think you're really, you're not getting the meaning of the lower class of people.
Okay.
I mean, you have to change the way I think.
Okay, thank you very much. Again, we're glad to hear your views. The issue of the PPC, just for the viewer to know, the PPC could not pass Parliament without two-thirds majority. Two-thirds majority out of 65 is 43. The PPP never had 43 on the government side, even when it had its highest number of 37. It therefore required the support of the then opposition. And that is why I said consensus was achieved after 13 years. We gave our consensus in the opposition this time. They did not when they were there. On the issue of the 1% and the salary increases, we didn't promise people a 20% increase in salary. We didn't promise that in 2015. APNU AFC did. And they've given the workers 2.5% last year from July to December, whilst at the same time giving themselves a 50 to 100% increase in salaries. And that at the same time in this year they're now offering 10% and 1%. There was no minister in the government who got $1 million salary under the PPP. So just to clarify those are facts. Certainly in terms of our PR work, this was one of our weaknesses as a government. Our PR work was not very good, but nevertheless the local government bodies, regional RDCs, municipalities, ministers, public officials, technical people all play their work. But one of the things that the PP cannot be faulted with is the visibility of its ministers and president in the communities. But you can't say they'd be there every day. But I can say when I compare the visibility and accessibility of the people of this country to the president today and the former presidents on the PPP, is chalk and cheese. The PPP presidents were always out among the people, not necessarily in every village all the time. We had cabinet retreats that went into the regions and spent a whole week in the regions, going village by village to meet people and having designations. That's not happening now at all. Even at the National Tushars Council meeting, where there used to be the tradition that for 2 days, the president and cabinet ministers would sit with the Amman communities and make decisions there to solve some of the problems they had. That didn't happen this time. Some ministers came and barely gave half an hour to the communities, most of it in their speeches. And so no decisions were made, no rectification. So I agree that we have faults and we have to improve. But also, we have to continue struggling. Whatever were things that we didn't do as well as we should have, we can say, and I would say this, we did it a hell of a lot better than this government is doing it. And I ask you to watch around you. Watch around you. And the most dangerous thing about this government is the threat to democracy. So you can cut hairs about a number of things. The threat to democracy is a serious one. No consultation, lack of transparency and accountability. Politicians may all be the same, but every government that comes in says they're going to do better than the last. And it is the electorate that decides if they've kept their promises or not. From our position, they're not keeping their promises. And I believe that a lot of people who voted for this coalition government are disappointed that most of those promises made, especially those that had to be done in the first 100 days, they've been shafted. Didn't happen. Okay. Thank you very much. Good afternoon for matters of public importance. Good afternoon.
Hello?
Hi, good afternoon. Matters of public importance.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. You promised to speak about the dialysis issue about 3 weeks back.
Yeah, I did ask, and now I've forgotten what the answer was. I didn't walk with my notes, sorry. But the issue was that, just give me a minute to think, because I did make notes of it, and I did speak to a number of people, but I didn't walk with my notes. But the dialysis issue that, can I take your number and call you back later when I can retrace my steps?
Yeah,
This is the number on my phone, right?
yeah.
Okay, just give me a minute, let me write it down.
Yeah.
So, I did look into it. I just, that was about 2 weeks ago, the day you phoned me, I actually found out. This is a problem, maybe I'm getting, I'm advancing, you know? I'm not as young as I used to be. Okay, thank you very much for being patient.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay. Hi, good afternoon. Good afternoon. Hello, good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon. Good.
Yes,
Congratulations on your topic that you're raising here. I know that they show some faith and charity soon, and I can recall they did that to you in Togwell as well. 13 eggs, but those eggs make you probably clean your skin a little more. Make you look more fit. I want them to know. My contribution here on your program is that I want the members of the public to look in their community, wherever they are, and assess where the country was during the 28 years and where it moved from then and is presently.
yes.
I want to give you an example. I can remember the people, the rice farmers and the other people down my Coney and my hiker used to be flooded from centuries. The previous administration could not find a solution to that problem. The PPP introduced the Hope Canal, which was badly criticized. I came back from Cane Grove about 4 days ago, and I spoke to some residents, and they said they are grateful for that operation there. I stopped on the bridge for just about 2 seconds, and I had a look at the massive structure. My other contribution here, I don't want to be long.
Yes.
I can recall the people in Essequibo, and I'm saying that they were ungrateful because I could planting right there, Freefen Aberdeen area. You
Yes.
had to get tractors to pull the big buses on the road.
Yes.
The road was built under the PPP.
Used to be called the abortion road.
Yes. The ferry, they couldn't have had no ferry. All the ferry were down. Malali, Makora, Turani. They were next to go to BK and the mayor city council. Garbage. The PPP repaired those boats. They put 2 brand new boats. And yet the people in the Essequibo turned their back against the PPP.
Yeah.
What I am saying, that people are saying that they're talking about generations of slavery, but the Essequibians were like slaves. And just a matter of few years, they turned their back on the people who took them out from the slavery. Take my number, and I would like to speak to you off here when your program is finished.
Okay.
I would want to speak to the opposition leader, so that's why I want you to take my number and call me.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, a couple more minutes. One more call. Let's take that. Hello, good afternoon. Matters of public importance.
Good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon.
I'm a member of the PPP party.
Yes.
What I could say for the last 28 years when the PNC was in government,
Yes.
all the wrong things they do. And when the PPP take over, the amount of good they don't develop here, and the supporter who work with them, all of y'all used to aim street, be the supporter more than the APNU supporter. Y'all used to do for them more than we, who used to work hard and plant rice and clean and do everything. And today, we still got to suffer under PPP government, and we got to suffer under the APNU government. The treatment the PPCP supporter does normally get. Nobody's going to come and talk to no minister in the PPP time. The supporter, everyone, the minister used to play more big than anybody else. But Jagir was the only smart people could have talked to. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Oops. Yeah. Well, these are views that people do have, and I mean, one has to be very careful with a number of things. One is that when in 1992 we had the first free and fair elections, and the PPP won for the first time from 1964 to free and fair elections, one has to remember what this country was like. It wasn't only PPP supporters that suffered. They were discriminated against, they were locked up, arrested, poor. But Guyana was poor. All Guyanese were poor. 61% of our population lived below the poverty line, and the persons who were the most poor of all were the Amerindian people. And although we have made changes and reduced the poverty level across the country, and especially in the Amerindian areas, we still have to battle poverty. As a country, as a government that came into office, it is a responsibility of any government to be able to lift people out of poverty, to improve their conditions of life. And this is for people who are not PNC, who are PNC, PPP, whatever party they belong to. Our task was to try to lift Guyana out of poverty, to reduce the debt, because the debt levels were so high that we didn't have money to spend on the reconstruction of our country. Health was collapsed, education was collapsed, there were no housing programs, roads were in bad condition, and there was no money. The treasury was empty, in contrast to what it is now. So I know that many comrades say we're doing for people of another party and not them. That's not true. For every single village you went into Guyana, whether PPP supporters or not, there was something or some things that were done in those villages, or things that were done in those regions that changed the quality of life in those regions for everyone. And so we can't do what APNO is doing now. Or were we supposed to have done what APNO is doing, and that is only giving to their own supporters? Removing people from job because they think, because of the color of their skin, or they assume that they're PPP supporters. Were we supposed to do that? Because we didn't. And we have to remember there was violence, and violence, and violence. And so we have to put things in context, comrade. The ministers some ministers were very good, some ministers weren't so great. That's human, but whether they were scandalous and scandals and corrupt, like what we're seeing today, that's an issue that will be debated, I'm sure, in many programs. But the PPP ministers had to have a half day open to the public. And a number of PPP ministers, particularly the social services, were very active, and Amerindian Affairs were very active in the communities. The ministers of agriculture were supposed to be busy in agriculture. And I know that when Dr. Ramsamy was there, he was very active going out to communities and to rice farmers. And of course you had other bodies that represent the rice farmers. So I'm sorry that there is that remaining view. And there may have been, I don't disbelieve that there may have been ministers who were not approachable, some who may have been arrogant and so on. But the majority, and led by the presidents, were active out there with public days, with cabinet outreaches, with bottom house meetings, and consultation. And any government has to run a country on behalf of all. Obviously it has to try to help people who supported it, make sure that they have water and their basic things and so on. But we had to take people out of terrible, terrible poverty. And it took a long time to bring people up to a certain level in education. We have to remember that the majority of people were dropouts. People weren't finishing school. People weren't finishing primary school. So no matter what the government talks about now about education, they seem to be forgetting the 23 years and starting from 1992 with what we took over, because I see them talking utter nonsense. But the fact that in 1992, only about 40% of the children reached high school, and a 70-odd% finished primary school. It's a different thing in 2015, where over 70% of the children were finishing secondary, and 100%, 97% were finishing primary school. Completely different. And so these are achievements we're proud of, and it came out of meeting the children and the parents and so on at the community level. So there are criticisms, and some are very right, some are exaggerated, some may be factually wrong, but we have to listen to all of that, and we have to improve. And we say to the people over and over again, we made mistakes. But we know too that the results of the 2015 election if there had been free and fair election, and that the election results were not compromised by GCOM. And that is why we have an election petition, which is now 15 months old and cannot be heard in the courts of this country, whereas other countries in the Caribbean their opposition went to election petitions, and their petitions have been heard. Trinidad, for example. And yet, we are 15 months late and the election petition has been heard. So someone has to explain how we lost by 4,526 votes in 2015, and we won in March, less than a year later, 30,000 more votes at the local government level if people were so dissatisfied. And so we continue to say that we were cheated and not defeated. And therefore we will continue to work to represent our people, all people, our own party supporters, but also all people, because all people are suffering. And so the good life that is being promised is looking further and further and further away on the horizon. What we have to offer is that we have to struggle to make sure that the next elections are free and fair, and then the people will decide who will be the government. And we know that the people have confidence in the PPC. So we'll stop our program for now, and I wish you all the best. I always say to you, don't drink and drive. We've seen so many accidents in the last few days. It's terrible. And of course, let's talk about the crime situation. We've got to talk about that at another week. Every day there are robberies, 2 or 3 robberies a week. It's horrible. And so the woman in Diamond who got shot in the face. This is horrible, horrible. And we need to be concerned about it as Guyanese. But please don't drink and drive. And if you're with someone who's driving and who has been drinking, ask them to pull over. Either you get out and see if you can get a taxi or get another way home, and ask them not to drive. It's safer. You want them to be alive. Too many people dying with traffic accidents, and a lot of it speeding, and the other cause, of course, is drinking under the influence of alcohol. So have a blessed week, and we will see each other right here on Thursday next week on Matters of Public Importance between 12:30 and 1:30. Thank you for listening, and ta-ta. We'll see you again. Bye-bye.